Winter of discontent. Murdoch cast his mind back to the winter of 79, when the lorries had been turned back from Ardrossan Harbour. He couldn't recall if there had been a lot of snow in the first few months of that year, which, if there had not been, usually meant the bus would have experienced little difficulty making it to school over the Lumlash Hill. So it was indeed fair to say it had been a winter of discontent, even if its meaning in this instance was solely restricted to the sense of grievance deeply felt by his fellow pupils. He remembered the effects around that time fairly accurately, though, because the image of Cooper's shelves lying bare had remained with him, having been sent there to buy some sugar. He was glad he hadn't been asked to get anything else, because his mother always had a tendency of turning events round as if the failings of others were his sole property right. "Sorry, son," said John from behind the counter. "The lorry never made it through the picket again." "Well, at least you can't blame me on this occasion," he thought hesitantly, latching on to some crumb of comfort. Sure enough, as if there was no way of reasoning with her, this woman who ranted on like a woman possessed of the spirit, though of very different kinds, his trip to the shop was greeted with a raising of the voices. "If only you'd gone to that shop when you'd come off the bus, none of this." No, a national strike was not a good enough reason for his mother. Something a little more catastrophic was required. All was not lost, though, for having leaped the wall that divided his friend Hugh's garden from his own, and while waiting for him to finish his dinner, Murdoch had recounted the sugar crisis to his friend's mother. Given the speed or lack of it with which his friend ate, he knew he could probably have recounted the Cuban Missile Crisis to Hugh's mother as well, had she been in the slightest bit interested in that sort of thing. She filled up a plastic beaker of sugar and motioned it towards Murdoch, but withdrew it at the last moment, and with a wink she set off down the gravel path, bag in hand. Finally, Hugh emerged with his studded boots. There could only be one destination, and without hesitation Murdoch turned, grabbed the ball and headed for the Armadale, proclaiming their destination in all innocence of childhood. For if their destination had been so emphatically announced in later years, by definition it would have been for a drink, as the playing field shared the same name as a nearby pub. Mrs. Bremner met them going down the road. She had thought it best to deliver the sugar to Murdoch's mother in person, as she knew her near neighbour well enough to know that if she'd given it to Murdoch and let him do the explaining, by some perversion of thought it would have been cast as another failing on his part. As she revealed later, she had simply gone round to his house on the premise that everyone had been experiencing difficulty obtaining some of the more basic day-to-day provisions, and amongst milk and bread she had included sugar as a basic commodity, if any of them would be of any use. The kickabout ended with Brodick winning the European Cup. Barcelona had stood no chance, as they were simply outclassed by a far silkier attacking outfit. The Blues' 5-goal onslaught in the second half had prevented any prospect of the threatened comeback. Regrettably, the match had been curtailed to 10 minutes each due to floodlight failure, or as was more likely, the absence of any. The game had frequently been interrupted by a team talk, with both captains agreeing to work on their mothers over the coming months, with a view to them going on a camping trip in the last week of September. "How come it's always mothers we have to argue our case with?" thought Hugh aloud, but his speech ebbed away as soon as his thought began. It was replaced instead with a gag of sensitivity, which wrapped itself around his mouth in recognition that his mate did not have the choice of parents to debate the point with. Murdoch smiled in faint recognition, but his attention was already focused upon the proposed event. The cup triumph of only a few minutes ago had passed, no doubt to be played out again another night, subject to weather conditions, but with different opponents. His mood of triumphalism was overtaken by one of hesitancy in returning home. Either his mother would have caught on to the fact that Mrs. Bremner's visit was preceded by his trip over the wall, or else as quickly as the sun could turn to rain on this island, her mood would be as equally unpredictable, helped on by a refreshment which wasn't the cool accompanying wind. With a sigh of relief, he noted there was no car in the driveway, and becoming more relaxed in posture, he entered the house before shutting the door on this facade of a home.